In today's episode, we're going to teach you how to dynamically spawn enemies. Hello, and welcome to how to create a survivor's clone in Godot 4. So today we're going to be creating our enemy spawner, which means we no longer need this kobold within our world scene. Instead, we're just going to start off by creating a 2D scene. I'm going to be renaming this to, I'm going to just get my resources up. Enemy spawner. And I'm going to be adding a timer to this as well. And we're just going to be saving this under utility. Now I'm going to be adding a script to this. Just going to be keeping it very simple. And the first thing that I'm going to do is create a export variable, and this is going to be a very significant feature which was added to Godot 4. What we're going to be doing was not possible in Godot 3, and it's been a feature that I was so excited to have. And it's about being able to create custom classes and put them into an array. So I'm just going to start off by making this just a resource, which is just a generic kind of, and we're going to be changing this later. So we are going to be changing this to something called SpawnInfo. So I'm going to go into my utility folder, I'm going to right click, and I'm going to click new script. And I'm going to call this script spawn_info. We're going to go into create. I am going to then double click this, and we're going to go into a unique script, which I'm going to delete everything here and just type in resource. And we're going to be giving this a class name, which just means we can reference this as a class. So we're just going to call this SpawnInfo. And we're going to give this a bunch of export variables. Time start, export var time end. All of these are just going to be defined as integers. So this is what the :int is. It makes sure that Godot knows that this is expected to be a certain type. So on var enemy, this is going to be a resource. At export var enemy number, enemy num, we're going to make that int, and finally export var enemy spawn delay, which is also going to be an int. Now I'm also going to be creating a variable called spawn delay counter equals 0. I'm going to save this, and we now, I think this is meant to be just one space, going to save it. And now what we're able to do is we're going to be able to go back into our enemy spawner, go into our script, and instead of resource, I'm able to type in spawn info. And now within my enemy spawner, we're able to increase the size, and we're able to add a new spawn info, which is that script, which is going to have a lot of different variables associated with this. Now, unfortunately, there is a bug where it still thinks it's a resource rather than a spawn info scene. So we're getting errors here at the moment, where failed to set a resource for the type resource because this editor resource picker only accepts spawn info and its derivatives. We fixed this bug by closing the game and reopening it. So I am going to go into, let me just get this up again. We're just going to do this by going into games and utility. And we are going to be opening our project again, and this will fix the problem. So now we'll go in, and we can now see that instead of resource, this is a spawn info where we're able to set a couple of conditions. So for example, so I'll have to explain this as we type this, but we can set a range of times where we want the enemy to spawn. We can set the enemy that we want to spawn as well. This is just going to be our basic ASIC enemy Kobold Weak scene, or just our enemy. Currently says the player, that's just a bug. We want one enemy to spawn, and we'll give this a 1 second delay. This currently does nothing, but you could add multiple kind of spawn infos into this one export array. I'm just going to keep it at 1 for the moment, and then I'm going to go into the script. Now, there's a bit to type, so we're going to need to get a onReady version of the player. So just do our player equals get tree dot get first node in group player. We're going to have a variable for time, which is going to equal 0, and that's all good. So now we're just going to have a function. Oh, so now what we're going to do is we're going to be connecting our timer to our enemy spawner. And so every second, we're also going to make this an auto start. We're going to increase the time by 1 point. So 1 second equals 1 time. And then we are going to be starting a variety of loops. So for I in, oh, actually, no, before we do this, var enemy spawns equals spawns. So enemy spawns equals our export array, which is our spawn infos. And then for I in enemy spawn, so for each of these, we will check, number 1, if time is greater or equal to I.time start, and time is less or equal to I.time end, so it has to be in between, we're just going to continue the script. If I.spawn delay counter is less than I.enemy spawn delay, we're going to increase the I.spawn delay counter to plus equals 1. So this is specifically this variable right here, and this is just saying that we want to spawn this after every kind of 2 seconds. So we have to wait an additional second before we spawn our enemy. So in the case where it is equal or greater, in most cases it will just be equal, we're going to set our spawn delay counter back to 0. And then we are going to get our new enemy scene, which is going to be new enemy equals load. And load needs a string path. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be typing str, which gives us a string. And we are going to be getting the enemy, the I.enemy dot resource path. And the I, so the I is the specific size of the array, the enemy is this scene, and the resource path is just the path that it's used to find here. So in our case, it would be this enemy/enemy.tscn right here. After that, we're going to create a new counter, or var counter equals 0, and we're going to have a while loop. And so while our counter is less than the enemy number, so the number of enemies that we want to spawn, we're going to instantiate the enemy spawns. So we're going to be doing var enemy spawn. So instead of spawns, we'll do var enemy spawn equals new enemy dot instantiate. And this creates an instance of our new enemy. Now, afterwards, we're going to set the global position, enemy.global position. And this is going to equal a user-created function that we're going to make called getRandomPosition, which I'm just going to quickly make here function get random position, and I'm just going to leave this empty for now, but this will do something later. And then we're going to add the child, which is just actually spawning it into the world pretty much. So enemy spawn, and then I'll just do a counter plus equals 1. If we're going too fast, we'll go through this in theory time, so don't worry. Now, to get our random position, we're going to get our viewport rect. So var VPR stands for viewport rect equals get viewport rect dot size. Now, I don't want to get the edges of the screen. I want there to be a bit of a range. So I'm going to be multiplying this by a random float between 1.1 and 1.4. So it's going to be a fairly large rectangle. After that, we're going to be getting all four corners. So var top left equals vector2, since we want a specific point. And we're going to be getting the player dot global position dot x minus VPR dot x divided by 2 dot x divided by 2, and this will give us the left side. And then for our y coordinate, we're going to be getting player dot global position dot y minus VPR dot y divided by 2 to get our top position. And this is because, and you may be asking, y minus, it's because the y is inversed in 2D in Godot. It's kind of annoying, but it just kind of is what it is. So I'm just going to do a quick copy and paste this 4 times, and we are going to be doing, instead of top left, we'll do top right. Instead of top left here, we'll do bottom left, and for this variable, we'll do bottom right. And we need to differentiate. So in the case of top right, we need to change the x variable. So we want this to be, and right is a positive x, so we're just going to do the player scene plus half of the rectangle, and that's going to push us into the appropriate direction. For the bottom left, we just have to change the y coordinates, so I'm going to make that plus because Oz down is a positive y in Godot, and for the bottom right, we're just going to have a positive right as well. So afterwards, we need to pick a random size. So I'm going to do var pos side equals, and I'm just going to create an array, and I'm going to type in certain things. So we've got up, we've got down, get rid of the insert key right there, we've got right, and we've got left. And then I'm going to do a function that is hot off the presses. Like, this was not available in the previous version of the beta. So I'm going to do array.pickRandom, and this is going to pick a random value in this array. We don't need to do any funky business like we used to. So then we're going to have to get a random spawn. So var spawn pos1 equals vector 2.0. We're just initiating them at the moment, so no need to worry. We're not going to be using vector 2.0, so we're just getting 2 spawn points. And then what we're going to be doing is we're going to be matching whatever pos size we had. So match, match is a switch statement, and it's just saying, hey, if equal up, if equal down, if equal right, if equal left. So we're just going to have these up there. So we've got up, and we're going to have spawn pos1. And because it's up, we want this to be top left, and we want the second position to be equals top right, because we want to get the top side. If we want down, spawn pos1 is going to equal bottom left, and the spawn pos2 is going to equal bottom right. And for right, we are going to have spawn pos1, and this is going to equal top right, and spawn pos2, this is going to equal bottom right. Though maybe I should inverse them since y is positive. It doesn't really matter that much. And then we are going to have left, and it's just going to be top left, bottom left. So spawn pos1 equals top left, spawn, oh, I need another indent, spawn pos2 equals bottom left. So these spawn positions, we are then going to get a range between them. So we'll do a new variable called var x spawn, and this is going to equal a random float range. The F stands for float, and this is going to be the spawn1pos.x value between the spawn pos2.x value. And we'll going to be doing the same with the y spawn, and this is going to be rand f range spawn 1.y, and this is going to be random range between spawn pos2.y. And then finally we are going to return a vector2 with the x value as the x spawn, which is going to be a random range between the spawn 1 and spawn 2 positions. Spawn x, and then y is going to be y spawn, and this is going to return, and this is going to give us our global position, and this should be enough to get enemies spawning. So I'm going to go into my 2D scene, I'm going to drag and drop my enemy spawner into the world, and it defaults with this. I'm just going to leave this as so, and we should start having kobold spawn across the corner of the screen. And we've got one up top. Oh, that one just randomly spawned in there. Looks like we have a little bit of an issue. I don't know why that spawned there. So let me see, what have I done wrong? So the ranges, I believe, are all correct. Top left. When we go down, we want bottom left, and we want bottom right, and the bottom left is the player position x divided by 2 plus divided by 2. Oh, I know why. This is meant to be plus. Cool. And now we should have a variety of kobold spawning. Yeah, so we can see where with that one it started off low, and now it's no longer spawning immediately in the middle of the screen, and they are coming in from every single bloody direction. And they will continue spawning once every, I guess, 2 seconds. We'll get a new kobold for 60 seconds, and we'll have all the kobolds. And that is how to create an enemy spawner. Now, if you ever wanted to kind of change how this works, we could just, instead of having this, we could have it so that it's one... Oh, let me just quickly, I think there is a weird bug where the default of this is that. So I'm just going to remove this, go back into the world, and then add my own unique size eyes for my enemy spawner. And I'm going to make it so that the first 5 seconds, we're going to have just the enemy spawn, which is fine. I'm going to have one enemy, and we're going to have no delay. And then I'm going to create a new enemy spawn, and I'm just going to have that 5 to 60. Let's make it so that that it has to spawn the enemy as well, and we're going to make this 10. And we're just going to see this flood. So you can see it go from one spawn to another spawn. So we have a couple of enemies being spawned in a nice delayed fashion. And now they're all coming. They're all joining us and they are going to destroy us. And this is how you can start building ways for... This is how you can start building enemy waves, pretty much. So that's it for this tutorial. As shown in this tutorial, classes are a very good way of making reusable and shared code that you don't want as individual nodes. If you want to have shared features between various enemies but ultimately want them to have different AI, classes could be a great way to provide some shared level of functionality for enemies while letting the script associated with each monster be its own unique AI. This means that if all monsters take damage the same, and you decide to add a feature like armor to adjust how the damage is taken, you could adjust it in one place rather than having to code each monster's script to update the new code. It's kind of like having a second script for your object. In our case, we won't be doing this in our tutorial, but we have instead decided to create a class for its ability to hold onto variables. In Godot 4, you are able to add these classes into an export list and edit the array. This allows us to spawn objects within a generic loop using added data rather than hard coding enemy spawns to timers. I don't use classes nearly as much as I should, but they are an extremely powerful way to share functionality between objects, and you should keep an open mind with using them for your own projects. In our SpawnInfo class, we add a variety of variables that will track when the enemy is meant to spawn, what enemy spawns, the number of enemies that spawn, and any second delays of the spawning, which is tracked with the spawn delay counter. In the enemy spawner node, we run a timer every second, and we do the following. We add 1 second to our time total. We go through the export spawn array to see if there's anything within our time start and time end. And if there is, we check if the spawn delay counter is less than the enemy spawn delay value. If it is, we increase the counter and check the next SpawnInfo object within the export array. If not, we set our counter to 0. We load in the enemy and we spawn in the number of enemies on the enemy num value. We do this by taking the packed scene of the new enemy, creating an instance of it with instantiate, get a random position for it, and then add the enemy as a child. We do this until the counter reaches the amount of enemies we want to spawn, and then we go to the next spawn within our export array until we've gone through the entire SpawnInfo objects list within our array. To get the random position, we get the size of our viewport and then multiply it by anywhere between 1.1 to 1.4, so it's a bit larger than the edges of the screen. After that, we get all the corners and we pick a random side. Once the side is chosen, we mark the 2 points we want to get a random value from and get a value between the points. If we are using up, then the X value is going to be random, but the Y value is going to be equal to each other, making sure that the enemy spawns somewhere above the player. If we are using right, then the X value is going to be the same, but the Y value will be random. This value is returned and then used as the enemy's initial global position.
Give me the secret formula or I'll destroy the Krusty Krab!
Ah, you and what army, Bug?
Anchovies. What?
Anchovies!